really honestly try to put these together and get it out of politics. Yes, it's news commentary, news for normal people. I just try to get everybody to ask questions. You make your own decisions. But, I mean, good Lord, when you're talking about a Supreme Court decision, first of all, it's about gerrymandering racial districts. You can't get anything more political than that. But it's still important. When you ask the right questions, you got to figure out what it means. It actually truly is, and I understand that it's complicated by design, and over the heads of most people. It truly is one of the most consequential decisions we've ever had in our country that broke down yesterday. How do you know? And what does it mean? You got to go by who's most upset about this. Basically, the decision said you can't draw voting districts, congressional districts, made up specifically based on race. It should be common sense, right? You can't do that, can you? Then why would people be so upset about it? You got to figure out what it means for you to figure out who's most upset about it. Like, here's one reaction that happened to this decision yesterday on the Florida House floor.
Democracy! This is a violation of the Constitution!
Seems totally rational to me. Good God. More on Florida in just a second, because that's a key part of this whole thing, because they moved very quickly to start this. And many people will say that Florida started this whole argument. I don't know. We'll see. But it matters, but you got to ask the right questions. So what does all this mean? And where do we go from here? We'll get to it. We'll break it down for normal people. Thanks for finding Wicked Radio, the live stream, podcast, X, YouTube, Facebook, audio podcast, all that good stuff. Let's get right to it. I don't know what you think about Ted Cruz. My gut instinct is, I think a lot of you, if you're following me, probably like Ted. But even if, let's take like Ted Cruz's personality out of it, or his record, whatever it is. You can't deny the fact that Ted Cruz is one of the brightest constitutional minds in America. He is a constitutional expert. He just is. He's a legal mind that's really, really sharp. And sure enough, he did one of the best jobs yesterday as I tried to find everybody explaining the SCOTUS decision yesterday. Ted Cruz broke it down probably the best of anybody because he understands it the best of anybody. Let's take it from here.
And what the court concluded is that it is not permissible for elected politicians to gerrymander based on race, to draw a black seat or a white seat or an Hispanic seat, that when government draws distinctions based on race, that is contrary to the Constitution. I think that question is absolutely correct. As Chief Justice Roberts wrote in a previous case, it is a sordid business that's divvying us up by race. He also said the best way to stop discriminating on race is to stop discriminating based on race. And I think...
Oh, and most people, normal people, you, me, everybody else, who could blame us for saying, wait, hold on, wait, but you can't do that anyway, so what's the big deal? Hold on. Yeah, you could. Until yesterday, you absolutely, completely could create congressional districts and how you'd vote in there based on race. In other words, it was completely legal, and this whole court case came from the state of Louisiana fighting against the NAACP and back and forth about these exact racial lines back and forth until the court made a decision yesterday. Basically, this is what was happening. So you'd have a state, pick any state, and you'd have pockets, maybe metro pockets, urban pockets, whatever it was, of minorities. So they would say, Democrat Party would say, because they were, most heavily lean, on minorities for their voting numbers, they'd take that pocket and they would draw a district around it, right? Let's take like Alabama. I'm just taking that as an example. Outside of Montgomery, very, very, urban area with a lot of minorities there. So they draw a district for it. So, of course, you'd get a congressional representative from that district who would be from that party. And they'd have all these pockets of these racially drawn lines, and it would happen in every state in the union, everywhere, based on race. And this is what happened. This is what was happening until yesterday, when the Supreme Court struck that down. Here's where we go from here. Now, all these states, not all of them, are saying, we now have the legal right to change everything. Now we can go back to the way it was meant to be with the actual Voting Rights Act in 1965 and say, no, we're just making it on population. Back to colorblind districts for voting districts. In other words, this doesn't get a district just because it has a lot of black folks. This gets a voting district because it has a lot of people in general. Not black, not white, not Native American, not Asian, not nothing. Just people. The way it was supposed to be. And you still may be thinking, but that's what we were doing. No, it wasn't. That's the problem. A little bit of history here. Look at Google, look at your favorite AI, look at Wikipedia even, believe it or not, or I happen to cherry pick it from Grok. Well, what changed? What the hell changed? You've probably had this discussion before at some point in your life where you said, you look at voting maps sometimes, usually after elections, they pop up and it says, for example, the first Reagan election. I think he won almost every county, every state in the entire nation except like a pocket in Minneapolis or something like that. And you look at it and you go, and then you compare it to us where it's all divided and it's all crazy, county by county, district by district. And you're like, what happened? I can tell you what happened and when it happened. It happened in 1992 for a little, I'm not going to become a history professor here, God knows, but you can do your own research on this. So in 1965, the Voting Rights Act was enacted, right? Which said just that. You can't draw congressional lines based on race. That's by definition racist, right? And from 1965, for decades, we went along going like that, and things seemed to make more sense. Seemed to. Until 1992 came along, and they actually took the Voting Rights Act and they twisted it to actually make it racist, to make it legal, and modified it to make it so that you can create individual, racially based voting districts. 1992. Wait a second. Who was in charge in 1992? Oh. Congress passed, and President George H.W. Bush, more on him in a second, signed the Voting Rights Language Assistant Act of 1992. And this opened up the door for all this racial gerrymandering. Key changes. It extended the language. It expanded coverage. It expanded all this stuff. And they used it for an excuse because now it's wide open to create these racially gerrymandered voting districts. That's what happened since 1992. So if you've ever asked the question, what the hell happened to the voting districts in this country? If you ever look at the maps, election by election, that's what happened. Well, what they did in 1992 was just determined to be unconstitutional, and it's massive. One of the reactions, we'll go back to that crazy lady on the Florida House floor from yesterday with the bullhorn, but more specifically, look how twisted the news anchors were. And I don't understand why. They were just, I guess they didn't expect this decision, but this has been going back in the courts for like ever. This has been a long time coming. Look at this CNN reporter who explains exactly what it means. Had to, because she was caught off guard, had to truthfully say what this actually means. Here she was yesterday.
And then, when we get to 2030 with the next round of a census and redistricting, it really will change all the ground rules for what states consider, because basically what the court did today was to say, if you're going to try to challenge vote dilution, and vote dilution is real. Lower court judges have found it to be real. Lower court judges who have been appointed by Republican presidents have found it to be a real problem, particularly in the South, but other places too. And what's going to happen is just identifying vote dilution will not be enough to get a map changed. They're going to, the challengers are going to have to say that there are no race-neutral reasons for this, and that's awfully hard, especially because of the partisan alignment between whites generally voting Republican and blacks generally being affiliated with the Democrats.
What she just admitted there was all the arguments going forward because of a Supreme Court decision was, you have no argument to change a voting district, this particular area over here, because we have more black people or Native Americans or anything, so we need to make a whole district over here just to represent them. No more. It just goes by population. Colorblind voting districts. Seems like common sense, doesn't it? Oh, until you involve politics, because that's what happened. So you can imagine. So you've got CNN people freaking out about it. But how about this guy? How about the guy that actually pushed for Virginia to try to redistrict anything else? Now, that's held up in the courts, too, but Virginia just gerrymandered. Remember they had that whole state referendum? It went 10-1 Democratic districts over this. They say it's in response to what's happening in Florida, but here's the guy, Hakeem Jeffries, that pushed for all this in the first place, and now he's upset about it. But look what he says changes. It goes just beyond all this political crap and all these voting districts. Listen to what he says from his own words.
A more perfect union. And now we're at a point where affirmative action is gone, diversity is gone, equity gone, inclusion gone, racial tolerance gone, the Voting Rights Act largely gone. But guess what, extremists? We're still here, right. And we're not going anywhere.
So he just called you, if you're against special privileges for people because of their skin color, if you're against DEI, which we've known now for years has been racist against one particular group of people, white people. If you're against that, he calls you an extremist. That's what. So now he's all upset about that. But this was the same guy just a couple of weeks ago who was hailing the victory in Virginia to gerrymander exactly what just happened, 10-1. This was the guy just 2 weeks ago.
Our message to Florida Republicans is F around and find out. If they go down...
Okay, I think you just found out. Exactly. Because this is just, now speaking Florida specifically, so it seems to be this fight between Ron DeSantis, Heavy D, the governor of Florida, who has said before, he says, if you're going to do that in Virginia, fine. Look at Florida. If you ever open up the courts and make the case that we can actually make our voting districts based on population only, completely colorblind, completely on the up and up, which is what the Voting Rights Act was supposed to be in the first place in 1965, we're probably going to gain 4 Republican seats in the state of Florida, because that's actually how it's going to work out. Throughout the entire Southeast, all of these regions will gain Republican seats, because that's actually how the voting population looks, in reality, as opposed to what they've been pushing for years. So sure enough, here we are. Florida, probably, maybe by the time you listen or watch this on replay, DeSantis may be voting, may be signing into law, because it's on his desk as of in real time, as of this live stream. It's on his desk right now to do exactly that. Now that the Supreme Court has made it okay, he can actually make the voting congressional districts in the state of Florida based on population and not race. He's going to sign that. So Florida stands to gain 4 seats now. But that reaction was pretty predictable yesterday. Again, just to go back to this lady, this is a Florida representative. How does she feel about this? What's the general reaction now of Democrat politicians?
That is a violation of the Constitution. It is.
Completely sane and calm to me. I don't know what you guys are complaining about. You think this is all based on politics and power? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. So that's DeSantis. That's what's happening there. So that's what's going to happen. Marsha Blackburn, senator from Tennessee, also jumped into action. She is calling for, in her home state, she's calling for the congressional district lines to be redrawn again based on what? Population and not just racial gerrymandering. That's happening too. But I'll leave you with a warning, though. Don't think that this is just going to happen and make it all on the up and up because the Supreme Court says so. Because you still got a lot of people in, if you're on the red team, you got a lot of people in the Republican Party who are too wimpy to do anything about it. You want an example? Immediately after this, Alabama Governor Kay Ivey, who's on the red team, she's a Republican, she has rejected already a special session to redraw their lines in Alabama. Alabama, one of the states that really could, benefit from actually doing this on the up and up, based on population and not racial pockets, creating these new congressional districts, has already rejected it. Indiana could have redrawn their lines, and they rejected a special referendum session. They rejected that too, just about, I think, 2 months ago. So they did it too. Don't jump up and down and think that every single state like Florida and Tennessee is all of a sudden going to do things the right way and base their congressional districts on population. Colorblind population, because they may not have the guts to do it. But at least the Supreme Court is saying that's the right thing to do. You would think it's common sense. I know it's freaking crazy how this happens sometimes. But that's the best example of all. If you ever go back to, and like they always get published right after some kind of a major election, right? People like, I don't know, I guess you could say Fox News in general, but a lot of the political sites actually go through and they publish a map when all the numbers are in, county by county, district by district. And then you look at the whole map of the U.S. and red or blue or purple and how people voted or whatever. Compare the early 90s, before 1992 to now, where it's whole pockets of people like this instead of this scattered, splattered paint. And you wonder what happened there. Not changing the Voting Rights Act is what happened. But now we're going back to this. It's complicated. I get it. I hate talking about Supreme Court decisions. I hate talking about only politics. I like to talk about current events and how it affects all of us, asking the right questions. But this one is massively huge. Massively huge. It may affect things going on forever. It's one of the biggest threats to the people who have been racially gerrymandering congressional districts for years. It threatens their direct power. So you know what's going to happen. If they happen to get the midterms in their favor, they're going to do everything they possibly can to swing this back. They're going to do everything they possibly can to find another way to gain power. These are politicians. These are power pigs. It's what they do. And again, I keep on saying this. I think a lot of us have learned. That's the good news. A lot of us has learned. It's not Republican versus Democrat. It's not. Look at the example. George H.W. Bush. signed it to law, the revision of the Voting Rights Act in 1992. Correct me if I'm wrong. He was a Republican, was he not? No. This is the political power class versus normal people like us. There's one giant uniparty up there, and then there's us. Don't just go by political lines. But with the Supreme Court making this decision, it makes it a whole lot easier and fairer to get representation based on population and not racial lines. It's unbelievable that this has happened for this many years, decades, and it finally got fixed. Decades. It's not going to swing back anytime soon. Anyway, thanks for finding me. I appreciate you. Hopefully tomorrow something more is lighter and less complicated, but no less important. It's a big deal. Again, the big takeaway, you want to find out really anything, but specifically this Supreme Court decision means, you'll get your answer in who's freaking out about it the most. Like this lady.
Democracy! This is a violation of the Constitution!
Those people are upset. And by those people, I mean radical Democrats. So you might want to take this as good news. Thanks for finding me. Wicked Radio live stream and the replay and all that good stuff. YouTube on Facebook. But the big thing is mostly audio on the audio podcast, wherever you like to get them. On Apple, iHeart, Spotify, Spreaker directly, which is where my podcast platform, audio podcast, whatever they ask you to do. Like, download, share, follow, I don't know, whatever. They all have their different rules, but thanks for doing that. And put your notifications on for when a new podcast episode is out. Whew. It's almost Friday. It's been a big week so far. We'll try to make it less complicated. Thanks for hanging out with me. Make it a wicked awesome Thursday. I'll talk to you tomorrow.